Hello friends, I'm Kayla and it's time to do my favorite thing, auditing my own reading. Back in 2023, in fact, exactly 3 years ago to this week, I participated in this trend happening on YouTube where everyone was auditing their 5 stars and putting it into different categories and figuring out their favorite tropes. I also updated this list of like my favorite categories and things to read in mid 2024 with this video. I've done a series of videos where I reflect on the list of favorite things and I read books on my TBR, books that are recommended, etc. But I haven't updated the actual categories since mid 2024. So we're gonna do 4 things in this video. 1, we're gonna take all of my favorites from the last 2 years-ish, year and a half, and put them into their proper categories where they fit. We're gonna figure all of that out. 2, I'm gonna add some new categories and maybe delete some old categories because I definitely have some new favorite things and favorite tropes that we need to talk through and figure out. 3, what's 3? I'm also going to, after talking about each category, list some things on my TBR, things that are coming out soon, and a reason they're on my TBR is because they fit into these categories. And 4, I'm gonna talk about some future categories that I think we could see in the future if I find more favorites with these specific tropes. As of right now, we have 16 different categories. Books that play with time, books related to death, non-urgent apocalyptic books, a character being thrown into unfamiliar circumstances, where dreams meet reality, fake dating, organization and lists, mixed media, books with a nature setting, books where women's love prevails that can be platonic or romantic, weddings, informative memoirs, characters getting into control of their magic, shared consciousness, book-related books, and books about obsession. So the first thing to do is pull up 2024. Like I said, I updated mid 2024, so some 2024 reads are already on here, but these are the ones for the second half of the year that were 5 stars, 2025 favorites, and the couple that I've already found in 2026. Anything that I've given above 4 stars, I like to place into their categories. Now, I haven't planned this, so I don't know if I should go category by category or book by book. There are going to be quite a few books that don't fit into categories, so maybe we'll just go category by category, starting with, actually this works out because then I can pop in with the little TBR that I was talking about when I talk about each category. Books that play with time. This category is quite full, and that's because it encompasses a lot of things. Like, plays with time is a very broad topic. I include books that are told like backwards, like start with the answer, like a character's life, and then we slowly learn more things and uncover a mystery. Books where the day is repeated over and over again. Books where the time has stopped. Books where the characters are just confused by what's happening with time. So I want to expand this category and kind of turn it into 2 later. I also don't know if I want to zoom in so you can see, or I could just make the book a little bigger so you know what we're talking about, but then the quality's not very good. Anyway, I'm putting all this and more into a book that plays with time because this is one where a character is on a reality show and they get to relive portions of their life and see what their life would look like now. Another book similar is Love of My Afterlife. This is another one where we have a character who gets to, upon death, go back and like accomplish a goal and see what life could have been. I also would put The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow in this category because it fits into a couple different categories, actually. You have a character who's going back in time and altering history, but it's also to make sure this kind of character, but human being, but also they're from a book, accomplishes their goals and does what they're supposed to. So I'm also going to put this into book-related books. And also book-related books as a category that's kind of messy because sometimes it's about authors, sometimes it's about booksellers. It's just anything where people have a love of books or are writing a book within the book. Books that play with time in interesting ways on my TBR. Most of these are going to be from 2026. Yesteryear, a trad wife gets transported to a different time period where she experiences the realities of the labor and sexism of the aesthetic. Habits of the Sea stars a woman who finds a mysterious island with a man on it. She met him as a child, and now as an adult, it's the same man, and he appears to have not aged. So like, is the island stuck in time? And then George Falls Through Time is a time travel story where he's stuck in 1300, the year 1300, and it's stress-induced time travel, which sounds really interesting. And then I'm kind of expecting Exit Party by Emily St. John Mandel to have something to do with time because it says there are crimes committed and love is lost across space and time, and a lot of her books have that vibe. Anyway, while we're down there, we're also going to put female fantasy there because that's a character who is obsessed with a fictional character, and the love story is not with them, but there are excerpts from the book within that book. I'm also going to put the 13th Tale. And this moment, I can't remember a ton of the plot of this one for some reason, but I remember it's very bookish. So that one is going to go into book-related books. And then Parable of the Sower, like that character is creating their own religion and therefore book. I feel like we're reading the book. There might be more bookish things down there, but I'm not certain. Bookish books on my TBR. The Ending writes itself, where 6 authors are competing to finish a dead author's final book. The Library After Dark is obviously in a library, and we're following booksellers who get trapped inside with a killer. And then Tropes is a romance about 2 ghostwriters who are working together to write a love story, and then they're gonna fall in love. And now I'm questioning, okay, I have like Jane Austen's Bookshelf. That is a book about books, but that specific category is fiction. I don't know if I would want to put Jane Austen's Bookshelf in there, but I think I could put it into informative memoir because that's one where you're reading where Jane Austen got inspiration, but you also are reading the author's experience as a rare book dealer and information about all these women from history. So I think that one works there. Also in informative memoirs, I would put this little trio of books. The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates, Perfect Victims by Mohammed El-Kurd, and then also One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar El-Akkad. When I call something an informative memoir, I mean when an author is writing about their life, a moment from their life, and then weaving in information about a specific topic, specifically for us to learn from them. This is something that I don't really know until I read it, that that's the kind of book it's gonna be, but one that I think will be because I've read Disordered Cosmos from this author is The Edge of Space-Time, which I think is gonna be centered around learning about space and time. Going back to the top, we have Related to Death. This is also a very broad category. For example, I'm going to put The Measure in there. This is about death in the way that like you get a little string that tells you how long you're going to live, and from there you have to make decisions leading up to your death, how impending death is for you. And then also Martyr is like kind of a book about wanting to make an impact with your death, even if death doesn't necessarily occur. We have Elegy for the Undead, which is about the undead. So like that's obviously the dead. It's zombies, but it's also a love story. A Sky Full of Elephants is about like a huge selection of the population all dying on the same day and how that affects the people remaining. The Har follows a woman after her husband dies, and that impacts the plot. The Wedding People is about a woman who's thinking about ending her life. I don't know if that perfectly fits in there. Some death-centric books on my radar coming out this year include This Dark Academia from S.A. Barnes. It has a main character who is the daughter of death. And then Wretch is a horror novel where people get one last chance to connect with their loved ones after death for a price. The Wedding People may not perfectly fit into death, but where it does fit in is obviously weddings. I love a wedding setting. It doesn't matter if it's a romance taking place at a wedding or it's a thriller taking place at a wedding. It's leading up and organizing a wedding, like anything wedding adjacent I love. And The Wedding People is set at a wedding. The woman doesn't even know the bride, but they impact each other in a big way. Also, one of my favorite contemporary romance of last year, Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. That one is about wedding planning and being a florist for a wedding, and the wedding industry is so much a part of that book that it was perfect. And I don't think that any more of these specifically focus on a wedding. I've got a ton of wedding books on my TBR. We have Summer of Love, a romance where a woman invites her friend as a +1, but they're gonna catch feelings. For the Bride is a romance between the maid of honor and a bridesmaid to a wedding. They hate each other, but they're gonna work together to plan the wedding and fall in love. Leave and Come Back is another wedding +1 story, but they have to pretend to have not dated in fear of the family not accepting him. And then Last First Kiss has 2 men, and it's a second chance in the wedding industry. Next up here, we've got Non-Urgent Apocalypse. And this is kind of anything that's happening in a future setting that isn't, oh my God, something is actively attacking us and we need to survive. And it's like action-packed, the world is literally gonna end. It's kind of more of the idea that the world is slowly ending. We know that everything doesn't look the way that it used to, but it's often more about personal characters and romance and just random kind of things. So I should probably change it to just near future settings. I'm not really sure, but the compound I feel like fits in here. I love how we don't even get a good idea of what the world looks like, but we know it's not in a great place. It feels very non-urgent. Wild Dark Shore is also like a future where we know things are not in a great place, but it's not super clear what's happening in the world. And it is more about the interpersonal relationships. So I would put that one there. Elegy for the Undead, the one that I was telling you about with the zombie stuff, that one I think also would make sense over there. Because even though there's death and difficult things and it's apocalyptic in a more creaturous way than a lot of the others, it still doesn't feel very urgent. It's hard to know how urgent an apocalyptic book is going to be until I read it, unless it's from an author that I've already read from before, but I prefer low action and existential books. So I'm hoping to love All We Have Left, which is a marriage of convenience to acquire medical care at the end of the world. And then Not With a Bang has a celestial object approaching the earth, and we're following the family dynamics as they implode, as they wait for the earth to implode. Organization and lists, I'll tell you right now, is one that we're going to be removing. There were categories that I made back in 2023 that I just recognized books had in common, and I was trying to pinpoint what those things might be. And something that I really love is a well-organized book, or a book where someone's accomplishing a list. But the thing about this category is I don't automatically pick up, prioritize, or read a whole bunch of books like this. It just so happens that books that I already love happen to revolve around a list. I like when there's some kind of countdown, or when you know the book is going to be organized from 6 different perspectives or over 6 different days, or, you know, every husband gets their own chapter or whatever. And then mixed media is the same. I don't automatically pick up books because I know that they're mixed media, and I read a ton of books that are a mix of letters and emails and articles that I don't end up loving. So while I know I could put The Appeal by Janice Hallett in here, this is a category I'm going to get rid of because I don't think that I love a large enough percentage of the books that I read that have mixed media to consider it a favorite and like something that I need recommendations for. Nature settings is also one that I agree is something I love to read, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna pick up a book regardless of the plot just because it's set in nature. So all of these books I love, and Wild Dark Shore, I would pop into there. The Butcher of the Forest by Premi Muhammad is a horror, very foresty. Nature-focused stories for me aren't even just about learning about the flora and fauna. I just like the descriptions of lush forests and seasonal changes and weather descriptions. I think they're really lovely, but so it's, again, hard to know with this one until I've read it, if it will be that. But I feel like How to Survive in the Woods, this is a thriller in a forest setting, so I'm sure there'll be lots of forest vibes. And then Lost in the Garden, just based on the cover and title, it's a gothic horror surrealism that I think will have some beautiful descriptions. Then we've got Women's Love Prevails. And I don't know that I read and loved a ton of sapphic things in the past year and a half. Immaculate Conception is one that I think makes sense in that category. That's a hard book to even pitch, but it's not a romance. But their connection, I feel like, derives the plot, though I don't know you necessarily like love their dynamic or they even love their own dynamic. One that definitely does fit here is Feast While You Can. They are dealing with hate in their own community and then a demonic presence. They don't know if their love should prevail, but it is a focus of the book. A woman getting through tough stuff with the support of another woman is just such a powerful plot to me. I think the only one on my radar that I know for sure that's coming out that has that vibe is Sweet Bitter Song. This is Greek mythology. The women are pulled apart, they come back together, and it says they have they live in a place where love has space to bloom. And I think that sounds really lovely. Getting Control of Magic is the next category down here. And this is something that I loved for a very specific amount of time, and I was always looking for things that did this. I don't know that it's something that I seek out or that I happen to just read a ton. It often occurs in a young adult story where a young witch is understanding she has magic or is getting back into control with magic she's lost. And while I still love a witchy story, I love magic stories, I don't think this is something that, I have read some, but of my favorites, of the things I've given 5 stars, I don't really see that anywhere. I love watching women work together, but I also love a woman just finding her strength, her inner strength and power. Characters honing in their personal abilities in fantasy is something I really like. I think We Dance Upon Demons will have this. It stars a woman getting power and then fighting to keep it. And then The River She Became has a scholar who could restore magic to her entire land, but she has to outwit and outlast all of the dangers first. Next up, let's talk shared consciousness. This is another category that I love. I love when people have a hive mind, or they're two people like communicating via their minds, just two people. Someone is controlling someone else's mind. I just love, I love that idea where you can hear someone else's thoughts. And I don't know that there's anything here that does that, which is very interesting. I think maybe The Employees by Olga Raven is like kind of a collective consciousness, but it's more about how the way the book is written as opposed to what's actually happening in the plot. But like it kind of fits the vibe that I'm thinking of. And I feel like there's probably something else here that I'm just not remembering. I know I read quite a few collective consciousness type stories that were in the romantasy realm, and I didn't love them. So I'm gonna say there's nothing here that quite fits that. If I'm wrong, I feel so stupid. I just realized another one, and that's Immaculate Conception, where they're going in and like sharing, like scientifically, they're figuring out how to share a consciousness. It's hard to build a TBR of shared minds or collective consciousness because it's not always in the book pitch, but I think Decomposition Book kind of has this. It features a woman finding a dead body in the woods. She reads her journal and somewhat gets lost within her mind. So if you have any others that you know are coming out, definitely let me know. And now I'm realizing I skipped some, like Unfamiliar Circumstance. Here's the thing about this category. Isn't 75% of what I read a character in an unfamiliar circumstance? Like that's what kicks off entire plots of books. So we talked about the horror, and the horror, like the woman's husband dies and then she comes across this creaturous thing. Like that's unfamiliar. That's new to her. That's weird. So that one could fit there. I Was a Teenage Slasher. Like that character is just living a happy high school summer and then suddenly he starts killing people. Is that not unfamiliar? The Will of the Many. A character has to go into a school and pretend to be someone. Exiles. Sure, the character is already an astronaut, but it is unfamiliar to go into this Mars setting and meet all of these robots. Possession is certainly unfamiliar. Feast While You Can, again, that's more possession. Pretty unfamiliar. Unfamiliar Circumstances actually started out as a concept with me loving mistaken identity books. So even Julie Chan would fit into this, where the character has no malicious intent going into a situation, but they just have to kind of roll with what has been presented to them. This actually kind of turned into the Plays with Time concept. Like these were combined and then I split them up originally, because a lot of Unfamiliar Circumstances, I love when someone just doesn't know what's happening, but everyone around them knows something else. So this one's actually set in reality, but it's called 4 Weekends and a Funeral. We have a woman who is dumped and her, I think it was her fiance, he broke up with her before he died. When she goes to the funeral, nobody knows that, and they just welcome her into the family. And it's a mistaken identity in that way, that everyone sees her differently than she knows herself to be. And I think she's gonna have her own love journey within this. But like I said, so many books fit into this category of Unfamiliar Circumstances. That's just one that came to mind. So let's move on to Dreams Meet Reality. This is a type of book where a character's dreams they can literally bring into the real world, or their dreams are being hunted for, or people are scared of their dreams, something in that realm. And I don't think that I read anything that fits into that category. But I do have some dreamy books on my radar. If I decide to give Sydney J. Shields another go, this one has a devilish man who appears in her nightmares, makes a deal with her to then be able to attend a prestigious magical academy. And When I Was Death has a coven of girls doing Death's bidding, and one of the girls apparently conjured him or it from her dreams. Let's move on to fake dating. I definitely have something that fits there. It might just be one, but I loved Till Summer Do Us Part, which has to do with a woman hiring this man to make her coworkers think that she is in a relationship, but it's actually like a getaway where they have to pretend they're in a bad relationship and their relationship's gonna be fixed. And then through all of the fixing, they just fall in love even though they didn't have any issues and they actually never knew each other. That was so much fun. And I have so many more fake dating books that I need to read. I will say over and over again, I love when characters feel so sure in themselves that they couldn't possibly like fall for the other person. That's why they agree to pretend to a fake dating situation, is because they're so confident they would never fall for that person, and then they can't help but do so. And what I love about this is it's almost always mutually beneficial. Like they're both going into it with something to gain, because I hate a power imbalance. So the starter X is at the top of my TBR. She has a job sabotaging dates and he needs someone to sabotage a date to get his parents off his back. Then another Megan Quinn on my radar is a not so meet cute. He's a millionaire, which isn't always my favorite, but I loved the last Megan Quinn fake dating. So he needs to make a business deal. She needs a rich partner, and it works out for both of them. And then A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating has a demon, and they're attached by a soul bargain by accident. And then the last one down here, I've hopped around so much, is Obsession. I just love books where you're in one character's mind and they can't stop thinking about something and chasing something. Sports definitely fit into here, but I think we kind of need a sports category of its own at this point, or maybe in the near future. Headshot is the obsession with boxing. I would even say the Ornithologist Field Guide to Love, because it's a hyperfixation on a competition where you have to find this rare bird. Is Walking Practice not about an alien who is obsessed with consuming humans? Like that's really all they think about. Notes on Infinity is about the obsession with creating immortality. So that's gonna go in there too. There's just something about all-consuming obsession that I eat up. Often it stars unlikable characters, so maybe that's what it is. It's one of my favorite things. I prefer it not to be obsession with another person, but being obsessed with academia, sports, a mystery, hunger, finding something like a book, or like the obsession with becoming powerful. So a couple that I have on my radar are For Human Use. This is the obsession with finding a partner, so much so that people will get with a human cadaver instead. I don't really understand what this is, but I think it sounds like it's just for me. The Glass Garden says it's a mysterious scientific anomaly that sends sisters into an obsessive orbit, right there in the pitch. And then Paradise Logic has a woman obsessed with becoming the greatest girlfriend of all time. And that wraps up the 16 established categories of what I loved and what I hope to read in the future. And then we still have a handful at the bottom that don't really fit anywhere specific, but maybe I could like stretch to make them fit anywhere. Instead, we're actually gonna take more books out of where they belong and delete and change up some categories. Instead of mixed media being a category, I am going to change this one into being still media related. Actually, we're gonna call it media commentary. I can't spell. And I'm actually gonna steal the book that's right here, 8 Perfect Murders, and pop that over. Because what this category is fiction or nonfiction that talk about other fiction, or nonfiction, I guess. I absolutely love books where we have a character perhaps obsessed with a thing and wants to do nothing but talk about that thing and explore that thing, whether it's impacting the real story we're reading or it's just something that they care about on the side. Just like I have all these ones at the bottom that don't fit anywhere, I also have these that were books that didn't fit into any of the categories back in the day when I originally created these. My Heart is a Chainsaw, I kind of think fits in the obsession one, but even more so at this point, it looks great in media commentary because she's obsessed with horror films and how it's going to affect her reality. I guess if we look back at the mixed media ones we just took out, some of these would actually be media commentary, because House of Leaves is like someone reading a story of a story. The Everlasting, I guess with books about books being a category, some of these would make sense. The Pallbearers Club is a man writing a memoir and somebody annotating it. So it's commentary literally of the story that we're reading. I would say female fantasy and Yellowface also have a media commentary, but it's more about commentary about the book industry, the writing industry, and like being a reader, more so commentary on the actual piece of work. And these ones make sense to me as media commentary. I left deep cuts down here, and this one definitely, with the obsession about music and the music industry, it actually feels kind of like the author wrote a bunch of essays about stuff and then decided to just give it to our character. We'll definitely find more media commentary down here where I have favorite memoirs, because Jane Austen's book club, and then this one, A Little Devil in America, is a perfect example of media commentary. That's what the whole book is. And then I feel like Bad Feminist is also that, unless I'm mixing it up with another Roxane Gay. I think this one talks specifically about performances and other people's work, but I am gonna pop all of those up there together. Oh, and you know what else? Recitative would be a good example of that, because this, at least this edition, this publication of it, is half a book review of Recitative, and then the other half of the novella is the story Recitative. I'm trying to see if there's anything else down here that I feel like is commentary, but I'm sure I have some on my TBR. I do. In This Story Might Save Your Life, a couple disappears, and we're going through a memoir draft and podcast episodes to figure out who they really were, so I think this fits the bill. And then for nonfiction, Trace Elements is about how science fiction and fantasy books are written. Jesmyn Ward also has an upcoming essay collection that dives into writers and novels like of her youth and adulthood. Like I said, I'm gonna delete organization and lists, and I think all of these books already also exist in other places except for Six Stories and I guess The One. And what we're gonna change this category into is my latest favorite trope, which we're gonna call workplace dysfunction. I love when characters have a common goal, like going to Mars, and they all think it's gonna go off without a hitch, but not everything can go as planned. I love stories like Notes on Infinity, where people are obsessed with working together for a common goal of improving people's lifespans, but it ends up getting really messy between them. Now, the one thing I will not fuck with workplace dysfunction is an unbalanced power dynamic between like a boss and a worker in a romantic sense. That's not something I'm ever interested in reading. But I do love going into a deep dive into somebody's reality, like in Sign Here, where we're following someone in hell who has to get people to sign up or to sign their life away. There's gotta be some down here with the old books that didn't have anywhere to go. I mean, Confessions, that takes place at a school. Several people are typing. This one, a person gets stuck into their office chatbot. I think when we get workplace dynamics, Tender as the Flesh, that's a good example, I think. We often have talk about capitalism and a lot of themes that I enjoy reading about. For Your Own Good is another school setting where the teacher just wants to take people out. Even The Martian and Project Hail Mary, I think, could be workplace dysfunction, because like they're doing a job, and even if it's not dysfunctional amongst the people, the situation is. What do you think? Or does it have to be more interpersonal? I don't know, but I like all of those for this category. I don't think this is something that I necessarily seek out or ever thought that I was seeking out, but making the connection that a bunch of my favorite things happen to have this in common is really cool. I think the upcoming book, The Art of Charming a Changeling, fits for this because it's following a museum worker, and there's a fairy trapped in a painting, and she has to figure that out, how to get him out or how to find the original painting, because this one's a forgery. The caretaking space is definitely a workplace as well. So in the caretaker, weird things are happening in this house while she's supposed to be taking care of it. And then A Proposal to Die For, the main character works as a proposal planner. It takes place at a resort. She has a boss from hell, and a dead body is discovered. Now let's go into Unfamiliar Circumstances, because like I said, a lot of books just naturally fit into this. And I don't think it's niche enough that it's something I seek out all the time, or that like every book kind of just doesn't already naturally do. So what I'm gonna change this into, and a couple of these are actually going to stay, isolated institutions, because Catherine House, Natural Beauty, The Will of the Many, and The Center are all about a character going into an unfamiliar environment, and it's either a place they can't leave, a place they feel they have to stay, a place they want to go to originally, but they're trapped in an environment of sorts. It can be a school, and this used to be something I was really interested in a school environment. But there are so many books that I've picked up that are set in a school that I've ended up hating. So I think it's more about an institution where there's a goal at the end of it. Like, you are either going to have fame and fortune at the end, you're going to get everything that you wanted, or you're going to learn a new language by the end, you're going to uncover all of these mysteries. Or in some cases, like Natural Beauty, it's a lifestyle that you're getting sucked into. And a lot of times when a character, this used to be Unfamiliar Circumstances, when I wanted to follow a character in an unfamiliar circumstance, it was them being pulled into a world that they didn't really know what they were getting into. But because of the type of character that they are and the type of character I love to read about, where they're just kind of going along with something and not really understanding. I suppose if I'm looking here at the reformatory, like this one, I love it because it has great commentary and it has a historical context where a child is taken into a reformatory, and there is a goal technically for the people putting it on. They're trying to rehabilitate him, make him a better person, and also enact like a punishment upon this child who did nothing wrong. And though it's not the same vibe as the others, I think that one fits in there too. And now I'm also seeing Fina and Fina up here. I need to move over into workplace dysfunction, because that is the ultimate workplace dysfunction. Finding portals in your workplace that everyone there is telling you like, oh no, don't worry about it. And then your life is ultimately changed forever. Yeah, workplace dysfunction. What else do we have for isolated institutions though? Sorry, I just realized I was talking about Catherine House when Jamila Green was here. My camera was covering that. You were probably very confused. I'm gonna make that disappear. There she is at the bottom. What else fits in here? I mean, in a different kind of way, Immaculate Conception. There's an institution that we're talking about, even if the entire book isn't necessarily set there. I guess Bunny. Yeah, that's more of a realistic, like they're just in a school environment, but it is the MFA program, naturally very isolating, even if the magical portion of it is happening outside of that. I guess, I mean, If We're Villains and The Secret History, these have never fit anywhere because I don't have a dark academia section, because I don't love enough books that are just blanket dark academia. But these are an isolated environment kind of books. I didn't put magical in there, so even realistic fiction can go in there too. I guess Babel fits in there pretty nicely. And you can let me know after the fact if there's anything else that you see that I'm missing. Kind of fun to get some of the old ones out of here. And then back to things from 2024, 2025. Like The Raven Scholar kind of has that vibe, but not really. Ooh, House of Hunger. That's a perfect one that isn't a school environment. She is in a manor and being used by people who are into bloodletting. I think that might be it for isolated institutions, unless you see something that I missed. For isolated institutions, I have Weaving Shaw, which I'm going to be reading really soon. At this estate, the main character must complete tasks that are really dangerous. In Wellness Retreat, it's right there in the title, she goes to help her sister and gets sucked into the world and the procedures. And then Make Me Better is also a healing retreat about transformation. If I know Sarah Gately, this one's gonna get really weird. Now I think I'm gonna go ahead and leave the rest of them alone. Like I said, I could delete the death one, but I think I'll leave it there. But I'm gonna add, let me move out of the way, 4 more. First up, we are going to split Plays with Time in half. One is still just Plays with Time, and then one is specifically different realities, no, different versions. I don't know how to phrase this one. Ooh, what about time resets or reliving moments, resetting reality? I don't know which one is the correct way to phrase it, but it's basically Neverworld Wake would be moved over because it's about reliving the same day over and over again until you solve the mystery. Meanwhile, the 7-Year Slip is one where it's just 2 characters who are in a different timeline, and every time they go into an apartment, they see each other, but they can only see each other like in this one apartment. That's not redoing anything. That's not resetting, reliving, or multiple different experiences of the same thing. It's just that the timeline is wonky between different characters. The husbands, I would move over to resetting reality because every time she gets a new husband, she gets another try at life, another try at a different partner. The Haunting of Belkwood is going to stay here because it's just that time has stopped in this one little neighborhood. The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle is experiencing the same day over and over again from different perspectives. The Midnight Library, that's one of the first ones I ever really read where I realized I love this thing, where she gets a chance to open up a book and a different version of her life is waiting for her. House of Leaves is just weird with its time. Kindred is just time travel. Dark Matter is his same life but a different version of it. 11/22/63, I think because he has multiple chances at the time travel. Oh, I don't know. Wait, which one would that fit in? I'm not sure. Love of My Afterlife. I can't remember. Does she get to retry? Well, she gets to try again at least one time. The Everlasting is a repeated situation. I think it could fit into both. How to Become the Dark Lord is like a video game. It's resetting the same day over and over again. Una Out of Order. See, it is her life, but she's just living it 1 year at a time, but in the wrong order. So that's not retrying. But All This and More is retrying the same life, but with different circumstances. Some of these are just like portal fantasy that I remember I put into here because in my mind it kind of plays with time, but I think I need maybe a different way to phrase plays with time. But I definitely like having these divided up. I feel really good about these being separated now, and I'm sure I have some books on my TBR specifically about resetting reality. On my TBR, I have Out of the Loop. This is a woman who was stuck in a time loop for 2 years, and she needs to solve a mystery. Ideal Life stars a neuroscientist who's having a very bad day. She comes across a magical watch that can rewind her 24 hours, but she becomes obsessed with the perfection of that. Destination Funeral has 4 friends reconnecting after a death in their group, and suddenly the day keeps repeating over and over again. And then in Every Version of You, a woman gets a chance to relive her college years and find her one true love. Oh, also, I don't totally know the full synopsis of Time Loops and Meet Cutes, but it's in the title. My next new category is one that for some reason isn't here, and it's games and competitions. Now, I did add this as a category at one point, but I guess I removed it from the board at one point. There was a lot of books that kind of felt like this, but I didn't love enough game-centric books to make it its own thing, but it's always been something that we all know I absolutely love. And now we can actually move some things in here solidly. The sports ones we talked about earlier, Headshot and The Favorites, yes, they are definitely about obsession with sports, but they're also sports books that do have competitions within the storylines. One's about figure skating, one is about boxing. Those are some recent favorites of mine. Also from last year, one of my favorite reads was The Raven Scholar. This one has to do with competing and the training to compete, and someone being in charge of their clan, and then that clan being in charge of like everyone. The Will of the Many definitely has competition element. They're in school and they're working on these little mazes, labyrinth kind of things, even though the overarching plot is not necessarily about a specific competition. There are multiple competitions and challenges and games within the school setting. I don't know if there's anything at the bottom. Okay, Chain Gang All-Stars definitely in my mind makes sense. I feel like Daughter of the Moon Goddess had some types of competitions and training within it. I'll put those ones up here though, and I'll keep looking. The Compound over in reality shows, that's definitely a competition. Oh, another obsession one down here that is definitely a contest is The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love, because this one is about a competition between birders. For my TBR, these books, I don't think they're fully revolving around a game, but I know that there is a competition within the pages somewhere. The Divine Gardener's Handbook takes place during the annual flower pageant in this story. A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic features a cooking contest. And then in My Unfamiliar, we have a matchmaker, and they're accidentally bound and have to participate in a royal mage competition. We just left off talking about The Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love, and this one actually fits into another category. So we're gonna move it down here. This category is called Historical Scholarly Adventure Romance with matching minds. Okay, this is something really important to me, is that the characters have a similar passion for something, and it could be adventurous, but it could just be more like plot heavy romance. Now I've split this up this way because okay, this one fits into historical. They have a similar passion. It's plot heavy and it's a romance. Okay. This does all of those things. But there's a bunch of other books that are kind of in this vein, but they don't all necessarily fit into all of the things. But like, I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so like I'm gonna pull up Empire of Shadows. This one also historical. They have a similar passion. It's plot heavy, adventure-y, and a romance. But I don't have a lot of books that are exactly like this. But I do have books that make me feel the same way, and let's make room for them. Okay, A Curious Beginning I put in fake dating because there's a little moment of fake dating between Veronica and Stoker. But what this technically does for me is it's historical, right? And they have a similar passion. They're both passionate about being naturalists. And it's plot heavy. Every book is a mystery book and there's romance within it. So this I also like in here. The other ones are fantasy, this one's not. So I also wanted to put fantasy in here, but I didn't. I wanted to put historical fantasy. Because another historical fantasy that I love is Half a Soul. This is a historical romance and there's a lot of plot and their minds are in alignment. And that's something that I love in a romance is when, like, I love, you know, opposites attract. I love the grumpy sunshine, but I also I more so than anything else love when two characters have a similar passion for something, and that's what kind of kicks off the plot. Two more that come to mind for me with this kind of vibe are The Favorites and Notes on Infinity and Deep Cuts. These three all have characters who have the same passion for something. Their minds are in alignment. It's music or it's science or it's sports. And like The Favorites is more plot heavy. The other two aren't. Deep Cuts and The Favorites have more romance, but The Favorites is probably the only one definitively romantic. None of those are historical, but these all give me the same feelings. It's like the banter, it's the battling of the minds, it's scholarly dynamics. Oh my God, I left out Emily Wilde. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies is the quintessential book for this. It's historical, they're both scholarly, it's an adventure and a romance. So I just need somebody else to figure out exactly what it is here, because I think what I'm falling back on every time is the relationship and the mental complementary component. Complementary mind battle. I have no idea. I do have an idea. It's not certain what's happening here, but I know what's happening here. And I know I'll find more and more of these to come in my life. On my TBR, I have The Geo-Magician. This is a historical fantasy following a paleontologist wanting in on a magical society and the scholar who can help her get in. The Art of Charming a Changeling that I said before has a fairy trapped in a painting, and it seems like maybe their dynamic is what I'm looking for. Letters from the Last Apothecary or Lost Apothecary. I can't read my own writing. This is a magical institute where we follow two hopefuls who clash, but they have to work together at this apothecary. Rivalry of Hearts has been recommended to me a few times. This is about rival authors and fighting for a publishing contract in the fairy world. And then the Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels I have on my TBR shelf. The main character and the love interest are both hired killers and thieves, and it's plot heavy, historical romance, and they're gonna fall for each other when I think one of them is supposed to kill the other. And then my final category that we'll put here, we're going to call people reconnecting. Now, this is a newer favorite thing that I've realized that I love. And there's a couple different ways that we can go about it. One is where two characters are apart. Either we see them apart the entire time and they're working to come back together, or we see them together for a long time and eventually they part and they come back together, or they just can't stop thinking about each other, or the whole book is just two people coming into contact over and over and over again. And it can be in a sad way or a happy way. Like, let's pull The Reformatory is a really good example of this. This is about siblings who get separated and their commitment, especially the older sister's commitment to getting her brother out of his circumstances. I don't just blanketly love sibling stories. I think the first time I really encountered this and realized how much I loved it was with Girls Burn Brighter, which I put in Women's Love Prevails, because their friendship is something that drives them on and they're constantly thinking about each other through their entire lives as they experience a lot of hardships. I would also say The Wonder State fits well for this. We have characters who in their childhood were friends, and then like 15 years later, they're coming back together to figure out if these weird houses that they remember are reality or what they were really experiencing when they were younger. Another old one that never got a place is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I don't have like specific thriller tropes that I really love, and that's why I don't have a space for a lot of my favorite thrillers, but In My Dreams I Hold a Knife is the perfect example of a bunch of characters separating and then they have to come back together to solve a mystery. So we will pop that one there. Is there anything else I see down here? I kind of think like Black Cake could fit for that if I'm remembering the plot of it properly. I think the siblings are not the closest until they have to come back together to witness their mother's tapes. Vampires of El Norte, perfect example of like a romance horror that fits into that trope because the characters are separated for a large amount of their lives, maybe not even knowing the other one is still around or still loves them and whatnot. A Sky Full of Elephants has a father and daughter who've never met, and in the circumstances they're in, they get to connect. And then I don't know if I want to put any fantasy in here. I kind of want to make it like reality, like fiction reconnecting, specifically historical or contemporary, but not in a fantasy way, because then it could kind of play with time. Any of the books about, you know, like the Everlasting, where they're meeting up in different timelines or whatever, then like all of those would also automatically fit into here. And I like keeping this one being reality. And then another one I guess I forgot to add here, or I'm just not seeing it, but I re-downloaded The Lion Women of Tehran. This is a great example of these young girls separating, coming back together, and their dynamics shifting throughout the years. Ooh, People We Meet on Vacation, that would also be a good one because they hang out every summer for a trip. Even when they might remain friends in between, it doesn't have to be like under duress that they're coming back together. Ooh, Passing by Nella Larson just came to mind. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, that's another good example of these women and their dynamic shifting over time. Anything more recent favorites that are people coming back? I guess like maybe Feather So Black, because it's about a changeling and they're kind of like, she's trying to get back into contact with the person, her sister, that she replaced. I definitely don't want to pick up every single reconnection storyline that I see. A lot of times they get really sentimental. I do really in the mood for them and they kind of just appear in my life. I don't really seek them out. These ones are actually all otherworldly rather than realistic. So Destination Funeral, that I already told you about, has those 4 friends coming together. The Children features estranged siblings who have to contend with their mother's death in the fantasy books that she was writing starring them. And then Meet Me at the Crossroads has sisters with different opinions about how to deal with these doors to other worlds. And I think they become separated at some point. And I think we'll leave it at that. Those are the 20 tropes, the 20 categories that a bunch of my favorite books fit into and things that I actively would like to read more of. It doesn't mean I automatically will love the book if it has this in it, but especially the ones that have the least amount of books, like Shared Consciousness, Fake Dating. I need to prioritize more games and competitions, and maybe I'll have to wade through some duds to get to some good ones, but this feels like a nice amount of themes, subgenres, what have you, that all of my favorite things fit into. Now quickly, these are a couple categories that you might have noticed books would fit into throughout the video, but I don't think I have enough to make them their own category. So perhaps sometime in the future, we will have a haunted house category because We Used to Live Here, House of Leaves, and like kind of Brat fit into that. But I certainly don't have enough to definitively say that haunted house books are my favorite thing because there's way too many examples of ones that I've hated for me to make this a category. Possession stories, I think we could see as a category in the future. I've read Alba Diaz, My Best Friend's Exorcism, Come Closer, Feast While You Can. Those are only 4 examples though of all. I've read so many possession stories that I don't like, but I think if I find more, this could be a future category. Found family, I think would be a lot of people's favorites. Like I have this list of tropes that I know other people would audit theirs to be, like road trip stories, sisterhood stories. A lot of people love a revenge story. A lot of people love shape-shifting, cannibals, female rage. Like those are trends that I see a lot that my favorites don't fit into. But Found Family is one that I see it. I just don't automatically love books that have a found family because they're a found family. But To Be Taught If Fortunate is one that I loved recently. And like The Wild Ones, I see it. I just don't think that it's a core favorite of mine. And then reality shows, obviously I love The Compound, All This and More, and Escape recently. I don't think there's enough examples, but in the future, if I read more, as I see that subgenre expand, there's more and more books that I'm interested in that category. So I definitely want to read more of those. And then also 80s and 90s settings. Again, this isn't something I automatically love, like it has to be a specific kind of genre. But again, My Best Friend's Exorcism, I Was a Teenage Slasher is a recent one that I absolutely loved. We Ride Upon Sticks is a great example. So if I read more of those, this could be a future category. And then a couple things that I want to be categories, but they aren't, are fiction, where fiction meets reality. This is something that I want to love, but I almost never do, but I constantly pick up. It's where like a fictional character from a book comes to life and interacts with the real world, or a character from real life goes into a book. And I haven't liked very many of the ones that I've read. There's some coming out like If Books Could Kill, where she ends up in a book. There's a Romantic Hero, where he comes out of a book. Man of My Dreams, which is like a romancy thriller where a man comes out of a book. Another category I want to have sometime in the future is a horror romance category, because Feast While You Can fits into there, but I really can't think of many other ones where there is scares and there is like a relationship to root for or a relationship to follow. Some future ones I do plan to read are Lethal Kiss, How to Kill a Guy in 10 Dates, and Devil Inside, and then also Teddy Bears Never Die. Those are ones on my radar for sure. I could definitely see there being a clone category someday. Some of my favorite, I've only read a couple clone books that I've loved, like The Echo Wife and The Murders of Molly Southbourne. But I think if I expanded into like splitting into two different people or clone stories, I could find more in the future. Like Sublimation is coming out soon, and then The Other is one that's interesting. And then I want to have a sports category in the future, and we see that with The Favorites and Headshot, which I've talked about multiple times, but also We Ride Upon Sticks. So I think I have 3 solid sports books, and with wanting to read like The Open Era and a couple other things coming out, I would love to have a sports category, because I think I love sports books. It fits in with the games and competitions of it all, but I haven't read enough of them, and I haven't read enough good ones. A lot of them just lean into romance, and there's so much more romance than sports. So I would love to find a better blend of those two things, kind of like what The Favorites did for me. And that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if any of these you have in common with me. And I'm sure you're already letting me know any books that you know fit into the categories, ones that maybe I haven't read or ones that I forgot and I missed. And we have wrapped on another Casual Wednesday video where I just sit down and chat with you about something while I'm working on a longer vlog that will see you, that will be in your sub box this weekend. Bye!